He was the richest man in the city. Everyone knew his name. Everyone feared his silence. But no one knew that 3 years ago, in a small clinic with no light and no doctor, a poor woman gave birth to his child, alone. She never called him. She never asked for money. She just disappeared. Until the day his driver found a baby crying at his gate, wrapped in an old wrapper, with only one note pinned to the blanket. His name is Kelechi. He is your son. That night, the billionaire held his own child for the first time. And the woman he trusted most, his own wife, stood in the room, silent, because she already knew. She had known for 2 years. And what she finally told him did not just break a family. It destroyed a marriage that the whole country believed was perfect. The gate of the Obular mansion was tall, black, and always locked before 9 at night. That night, it was raining softly. Not hard. Just enough to make the security light look wet and gold. James, the night guard, was the one who heard it first. A cry. Small. Weak. Coming from just outside the gate. He walked closer, slow, holding his torch up. There, on the wet stone step, was a baby wrapped in an old, faded blanket. Beside the baby was a small bag. And pinned to the blanket, a folded piece of paper. James did not touch the baby first. His hands were shaking too much. He ran inside, shouting. "Sir! Sir, come quick! There is a baby! There is a baby at the gate!" Inside the house, Chidi Obular was sitting in his study, reading a business report by lamplight. He was a big name in the city. Everybody in Lagos knew Obular Oil and Logistics. Everybody knew his face from magazines. Big house. Big cars. A wife everyone called the perfect couple's perfect wife, Adiz Obular, elegant, always smiling in photos, always beside him at events. But nobody ever asked what happened behind closed doors. Chidi ran outside, his robe flying behind him. He saw the baby. He froze. "Whose child is this?" he asked, his voice shaking. James held out the note. "It was pinned to the blanket, sir." Chidi opened it with trembling fingers. The handwriting was rough, like someone who did not have much schooling but tried very hard to write neatly. "His name is Kelechi. He is your son. I am sorry I could not raise him alone anymore. Please, take care of him. Ngozi." Chidi's knees went weak. He sat down right there on the wet stone, holding a crying baby in his arms, reading that name again and again. Ngozi. He remembered her. 2 years ago, during a business trip to Enugu, when his marriage was already cold, when Adiz had traveled abroad for 4 months without calling him once, he had met a woman named Ngozi at a small roadside restaurant. She served him food with a shy smile. They talked. Just talked, at first. She was poor. She sold food to survive. She was kind in a way that felt real, not performed. One night became a mistake he never told anyone about. And then she disappeared from his life. He never saw her again. He assumed it was over. He never imagined this. He looked down at the baby's face in the rain. "Kelechi," he whispered. "My son." Chidi carried the baby inside, wrapped him in a warm towel, and called his personal doctor immediately. When Adiz came down the stairs in her silk robe and saw her husband holding a strange baby, she did not scream. She did not ask, "Whose baby is this?" She just stood there. Silent. Her face pale. That silence was the first crack in the story. "Adiz," Chidi said slowly, "do you know something about this?" She looked away. "I don't know what you are talking about." "The baby has a note. His name is Kelechi. His mother is called Ngozi." He watched her face carefully. "Adiz. Look at me." Her hands were shaking. "Chidi, please. Not tonight." "You knew," he said. His voice was not loud. It was worse than loud, it was quiet and cold. You knew about this child. She finally looked up, and tears filled her eyes. Yes, she whispered. I knew. The room went silent except for the baby's soft breathing. How long? Chitty asked. Almost 2 years. Chitty felt his whole body go numb. 2 years. His wife had known he had a son somewhere in this world, and she said nothing. Not one word. Why? He asked. Why would you hide this from me? Adiz wiped her face, but the tears kept coming. Because if you knew, she said, you would have gone looking for her. And I was scared. I was scared you would love that child more than you loved the life we built. Chitty shook his head slowly. You let me live a lie for 2 years. I protected our marriage, she said. No, Chitty said, his voice breaking. You protected yourself. To understand this story, you must go back 3 years, to a small town outside Enugu, where a young woman named Ngozi Ease lived with her old mother in a 2-room house with a zinc roof that leaked every rainy season. Ngozi was 24. She sold jollof rice and mwamwa by the roadside from 6 in the morning until dark. She never finished secondary school because her father died when she was young, and there was no money left for books. She was beautiful in a quiet way, not the loud beauty of magazines, but the beauty of someone who smiled even when life was heavy on her shoulders. When Chitty Obiler came into her small restaurant that evening 3 years ago, she did not know he was a billionaire. She only knew he looked tired. Lonely. Like a man carrying something heavy inside. You don't look happy for a rich man, she told him, placing his plate of food on the table. He laughed, surprised. How do you know I'm rich? Your shoes, she said simply. Poor men don't wear shoes like that. They talked for almost 2 hours that night. He told her, without giving details, that his marriage felt empty. She told him about her mother's illness, about her dream of one day opening a real restaurant with a roof that didn't leak. It was innocent, at first. Just 2 lonely people talking. But loneliness has a way of pulling people closer than they should go. When Ngozi found out, 2 months later, that she was pregnant, she was terrified. She knew Chitty was married. She had seen his wife's photo in a newspaper someone used to wrap fish at the market. Beautiful. Powerful. Everything Ngozi was not. She decided, that same week, that she would never tell him. I will not be the woman who destroys another woman's marriage, she said to her mother, crying at night. I will raise this child myself. But her mother, weak and old, said something Ngozi never forgot. My daughter, hiding the truth does not make you noble. It only makes the pain last longer, for everyone. Ngozi did not listen. She moved to Lagos quietly, rented a tiny room, and gave birth alone, with only a midwife and no family beside her. For 2 years, she raised Kelechi by herself, working odd jobs, sometimes going hungry so her son could eat. Until the sickness came. A sickness that ate through her small savings, then her strength, then her hope. She realized, lying on a hospital bed with a bill she could never pay, that she could not do this alone anymore. Not because she was weak, but because she loved her son more than her pride. So she made the hardest decision of her life. She found out where Chitty lived. And on a rainy night, she carried her sleeping son to that tall black gate, kissed his forehead one last time, and walked away crying, believing she was doing the right thing for him. She did not know that somewhere inside that same house, a woman named Adiz already knew her name. 2 years earlier, Adiz had hired a private investigator, not because she suspected an affair, but because she suspected her husband was hiding business deals from her. Rich men do that sometimes, hide money from their wives. Instead, the investigator brought back something else. Photos of Chitty at a small restaurant in Enugu. A woman's name. And months later, confirmation that the woman was pregnant. Adiz had been shattered. But instead of confronting her husband, she made a colder choice. She sent money, quietly, through a middleman, to Ngozi's landlord, asking him to raise the young woman's rent so high that she would be forced to leave the city and disappear from Lagos before the baby was even born. It did not work the way she planned. Ngozi simply moved to a cheaper, smaller room in a rougher part of town and kept living quietly, unaware that a rich woman she had never met was trying to erase her. Adiz told herself, for 2 years, that she had done nothing wrong. I only protected my family, she would whisper to herself at night. But deep down, she knew the truth. She had let a poor woman suffer alone, with a baby who was, biologically, part of the Obiler family, Adiz's own husband's blood, because she was too afraid to face the truth honestly. The morning after the baby arrived, the news had not yet spread. Chidi kept Kelechi hidden inside the house, cared for by a private nurse, while he tried to process everything. He looked at the baby's face for hours. The shape of his eyes. The small dimple on his cheek. It was undeniable. This was his son. I need to find her, he told his assistant. I need to find Ngozi. It took 3 days. Private investigators traced the small hospital bill she had left unpaid, then the room she used to rent, then finally, the hospital where she was currently admitted, weak, thin, fighting an infection that had gone untreated for too long because she could not afford proper care. When Chidi walked into that hospital room and saw her lying there, pale, tired, her wrist thin as a stick, something in his chest broke completely. Ngozi, he said softly. She opened her eyes, startled, then quickly looked away in shame. You should not be here, she whispered. Please, just take care of him. That is all I ask. Why didn't you tell me? Chidi asked, sitting slowly beside the bed. 3 years, Ngozi. 3 years you carried this alone. Because I was nobody to you, she said, tears sliding down her thin face. A poor woman who sold rice by the road. What was I supposed to say? Congratulations, sir, I am carrying your child, and by the way, your wife's world is about to fall apart because of me? You suffered, Chidi said. You suffered while my wife lived in comfort. Ngozi looked at him sharply. Your wife? Chidi hesitated, then told her everything, how Adiz had known for 2 years, how she had tried to raise her rent to force her out of the city. Ngozi's face went pale, then hardened with a quiet, painful anger she had been too tired to feel until now. She knew, Ngozi whispered. She knew I was struggling. She knew your son was hungry some nights. And she did nothing but try to push us further away? I'm so sorry, Chidi said, and for the first time in years, this powerful man's voice cracked with real emotion. Chidi brought Ngozi and Kelechi to the mansion once Ngozi was strong enough to travel, not as a secret, but openly. He told his staff plainly, this is my son. And this is his mother. Treat them with respect. When Adiz saw Ngozi walk into the living room, thin, humble, holding little Kelechi's hand, something cold rose in her chest. Not guilt, jealousy. So this is her, Adiz said, her voice sharp. The woman from the restaurant. Adiz, Chidi warned. But Ngozi, quiet as she was, did not lower her eyes this time. Madam, she said calmly, I did not come here to fight you for your husband. I came here because my son deserves a father. That is all. How touching, Adiz said coldly. The poor woman with the noble heart. Tell me, Ngozi, did it feel noble to sleep with a married man? The room went silent. Even the staff standing nearby froze. Ngozi's eyes filled with tears, but her voice stayed steady. I did not know he had a wife who loved him that night, madam. He told me his marriage was already broken. Maybe you should ask yourself why your own husband felt so alone that he opened his heart to a stranger. Adiz's hand trembled at her side. Then Chidi spoke, and this time his voice was hard, final. Enough, Adiz. You have no right to speak to her like this. Not after what you did. What I did? Adiz snapped. I protected this family. You let a woman and my son struggle in poverty for 2 years because you were too proud to face the truth, Chidi said. That is not protection. That is cruelty. Adiz's face crumbled. For the first time, the perfect wife the whole country admired looked exactly like what she was, a frightened woman who had made a terrible choice out of fear, and was now facing the full weight of it. That night, after Ngozi had gone to rest in one of the guest rooms with Kelechi sleeping peacefully beside her, Adiz came to Chidi's study, her eyes red from crying. "There is something else," she said quietly. "Something you don't know." Chidi looked up, tired. "What more is there, Adiz?" She sat down slowly, her hands folded, refusing to look at him. "You always believed I could not give you children because of a medical problem. That is what I told you. That is what the doctors told you." "Yes," Chidi said carefully. "You said you were unable to conceive." Adiz's voice broke. "It was a lie. I was pregnant once, Chidi. 4 years ago. Before Ngozi. Before any of this." Chidi went completely still. "I was pregnant for another man," Adiz whispered. "A mistake, during a time when we were distant, when you were always traveling and I felt invisible in this marriage. I was scared. I was ashamed. So I ended the pregnancy quietly, and I told you and everyone else that I simply could not have children." The silence in that room felt heavier than anything either of them had ever carried. "You judged Ngozi," Chidi said slowly, his voice shaking with disbelief, "for a mistake you made yourself. You destroyed a poor woman's peace, hid my son from me for 2 years, and all this time, you were hiding the exact same kind of secret." "I was afraid," Adiz said, crying now. "I was afraid that if you knew the truth about me, you would leave." Chidi stood up slowly, walked to the window, and stared into the dark garden outside. "You didn't just lie to me, Adiz," he said quietly. "You built this entire marriage, this entire image the world admired, on lies. And you let an innocent woman and an innocent child pay the price for your fear." "Chidi, please." "No," he said, turning to face her, his eyes wet but his voice firm. "I have listened to everyone's secrets tonight. Ngozi's silence came from shame and poverty. Yours came from pride and fear. But the damage is the same. Maybe worse, because you knew, and you still let me live inside a lie for 2 years, smiling beside me at every event, while a woman struggled to feed my son." Word spreads fast in Lagos, especially about a family as famous as the Obiolars. Within 2 weeks, the story had leaked, not through Chidi, not through Ngozi, but through a jealous staff member who sold the story to a gossip blog for quick cash. Billionaire Chidi Obiolar's secret son revealed, wife Adiz knew all along. The headlines spread across the city like fire in dry grass. At a business dinner that same week, one Chidi could not avoid because it involved international investors, Adiz appeared beside him, dressed elegantly as always, trying to maintain the image the world expected. But this time, whispers followed them through the room. A woman from a rival family, one who had always envied Adiz's status, walked up with a fake smile. "Adiz, dear, is it true? Your husband has a son with a roadside food seller? And you knew for 2 years?" The room seemed to lean in, listening. Adiz's practiced smile cracked. For years she had been the woman everyone admired, poised, elegant, seemingly perfect. Now, in front of the same people who once envied her, she felt the humiliation Ngozi had silently carried for years. Chidi stepped in front of her, his voice calm but firm. "My son's mother is a woman of far more character than most people in this room," he said, loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. "She raised my child alone, in poverty, without asking me for a single coin. If anyone deserves judgment tonight, it is not her." The room went quiet. Adiz stood frozen, watching her husband defend the very woman she had once tried to erase. While the city gossiped, Ngozi stayed away from it all. She spent her days with Kelechi, slowly adjusting to a world of comfort she never imagined, soft beds, warm meals, doctors who checked on her son without her paying a single naira. But she remained humble. She never asked Chidi for money. She never asked to be introduced as Mrs. Obiolar. She simply wanted her son to grow up knowing his father, and to have a chance at a life she never had. One evening, Chidi found her sitting quietly in the garden, watching Kelechi play with a small wooden toy. "You could have asked me for everything," Chidi said, sitting beside her. "Houses, money, anything. But you never did." Ngozi smiled softly. I did not come here for houses, Chitty. I came here because a boy deserves his father. That is all I ever wanted. You suffered so much, he said quietly. Alone. Suffering built my strength, she said. I do not regret it. I only regret that pride and fear made two people, you and your wife, build a life on silence, while an innocent child almost paid for it. Chitty looked at her for a long moment. I am sorry, Ngozi. For everything. You don't owe me an apology anymore, she said gently. You owe your son a father who stays. That is enough for me. In the weeks that followed, Chitty and Adiz tried, quietly, painfully, to decide what remained of their marriage. I don't hate you, Adiz, Chitty told her one night. But I don't know if I can trust you again. Not after everything. Adiz nodded slowly, tears falling freely now, without the pride she once wore like armor. I know, she whispered. I destroyed this myself. Not you. Not her. Me. They did not scream. They did not throw insults. What remained between them was something quieter and sadder, two people who had once loved each other, now facing the wreckage their fear and pride had built. In the end, they separated peacefully, choosing to co-parent respectfully rather than pretend a broken foundation could still hold a home. Ngozi did not take Adiz's place. She never wanted a crown. She simply built a quiet, steady life alongside Chitty, not as a trophy wife, but as Kelechi's mother, respected in her own right, slowly opening the small restaurant she had once only dreamed of, funded not by guilt money, but by her own hard work and Chitty's genuine support. Kelechi grew up knowing both the strength of the mother who raised him in poverty, and the presence of a father who finally showed up. And Adiz, humbled by everything she lost, eventually found peace and honesty, telling her own truth publicly, admitting her past mistake, and slowly rebuilding a life not built on appearances, but on real accountability. Some marriages don't break because of one mistake. They break because two people chose silence over truth, and it took an innocent child to finally bring the truth home.